Funny thing about being called a joke in public. Sometimes the punchline is the sound of handcuffs no one saw coming. I was standing in my kitchen at 6:17 on a Thursday morning, watching my wife's mugshot fill the screen of Channel 9 News, and the strange part was how quiet the house felt. No shouting, no slammed doors, no Madison clicking across the hardwood in expensive heels, telling me I was breathing too loudly, dressing too plainly, existing too visibly. Just the low hum of the refrigerator, the bitter smell of black coffee, and her face on television under a red banner that said breaking news. Madison Whitaker, 39, Public Relations Director for Cole Meridian Properties, had been arrested in connection with a charity fraud investigation that had just cracked open half of Chicago's real estate elite. Her hair looked flat under the county jail lighting. Her eyes were wide, not with sadness, but with the shock of a woman who had spent years polishing her reflection and finally saw something no mirror could fix. I set my coffee mug down on the counter. The ceramic made a small sound against the granite, sharp enough to feel final. 3 days earlier, she had stood under a chandelier at the Harrington Gala, wearing a silver dress that cost more than my first car, and told a table full of executives that I was a joke. Not struggling, not boring, not difficult. A joke. The kind of word people toss out when they think the man beside them has no weight left, no voice, no witnesses. The table laughed because expensive people are good at laughing on cue. Bradley Cole laughed the loudest, leaning back in his tuxedo like he owned the room, the building, and maybe my wife's attention too. Madison touched his arm when she laughed. I noticed that. I noticed everything. That had always been my problem, according to her. I noticed receipts. I noticed changed passwords. I noticed how a company that claimed to build affordable housing kept moving money through consulting firms with no offices, no employees, and mailboxes in 3 different states. I noticed how Madison's name started appearing on documents she once told me she only skimmed for messaging. I noticed the text that lit up on Bradley's phone when he set it face up beside his champagne glass. After tonight, he'll be out of the picture. But that morning, with her mugshot on the screen and reporters saying words like federal inquiry, donor funds, and sealed warrants, I did not feel victorious. Victory is louder than what I felt. Victory has applause. This was something colder, cleaner, like stepping outside after a long storm and realizing the roof was gone, but so was the smoke. My name is Daniel Whitaker. I am 42 years old, born in Illinois, raised by a father who measured character by whether a man kept his word when no one was watching. For 12 years, I worked as a forensic accountant, the kind of man companies hired when numbers stopped behaving like numbers and started smelling like lies. Then I stepped away, not because I forgot how to follow money, but because I got tired of watching guilty people smile in better suits than honest ones. Madison used to admire that part of me. Back when we rented a 1-bedroom apartment near Oak Park and split grocery bills down to the penny, she called my patient strength. Later, when the invitations got heavier and the rooms got brighter, she called it weakness. By the time the Harrington Gala arrived, she did not introduce me as her husband. She introduced me as Daniel, then made a face like my name was a stain she was trying to scrub off the evening. I watched her on TV now, that same face stripped of makeup and control, and I remembered the exact second her joke stopped being funny. It was not when the room laughed. It was when I realized she had mistaken my silence for ignorance. She thought I was the man standing outside her story, too dull to understand the plot. She never understood that I had already read the ending. 72 hours before that mugshot filled my television, Madison stood in our bedroom doorway and looked at me like I was a problem she had already solved. My navy suit was laid across the bed, the same one I had worn to 3 weddings, 2 funerals, and every company event where she needed a husband-shaped shadow. She tilted her head, eyes moving from the collar to the cuffs, and said, "Do not try too hard tonight, Daniel. It makes people uncomfortable." I looked down at the suit. There was nothing wrong with it. It was clean, pressed, and paid for. But Madison had learned to speak in small cuts, the kind that did not leave marks anyone else could see. She adjusted one diamond earring in the mirror and added, "Just stand near me, smile when appropriate, and please do not get into one of your number conversations." Number conversations. That was what she called my work now. Years ago, when we were broke and eating takeout on moving boxes, she used to ask me how investigations worked. She would lean across the table, chin in her hand, fascinated by the way a fake invoice could unravel a whole company. Back then, my mind impressed her. Now it embarrassed her. The ride downtown took 40 minutes in light traffic, Lakeshore Drive glittering on our left, the city rising ahead of us in glass and steel. Madison spent most of the drive answering messages, her face glowing blue from the phone. I watched the skyline and listened to the soft tapping of her thumbs. Not once did she ask how my day had been. Not once did she say she was nervous, excited, grateful, anything human. She only said, 5 blocks from the hotel, Bradley will be there early. Be polite. The Harrington Hotel looked like old money pretending it had never needed new money. Marble floors, gold railings, flowers taller than children, and a ballroom full of people who laughed with their mouths open but watched each other with their eyes sharp. Madison changed the second we stepped inside. Her shoulders lifted. Her smile widened. Her hand slipped from mine as if my palm had become warm enough to embarrass her. Bradley Cole found her before we reached the first table. He was tall, silver-haired, dressed in a black tuxedo that looked custom because men like Bradley made sure everything around them announced price before value. He kissed Madison lightly on the cheek, then gave me a handshake just firm enough to perform confidence. "Daniel," he said, like he was trying to remember where she had parked me. Dinner began under chandeliers that scattered light across champagne glasses and polished silver. I sat beside Madison while she leaned toward Bradley and the investors on her other side, laughing at jokes I could barely hear. Then Bradley looked across the table and smiled. "So, Daniel, what exactly do you do these days?" The table quieted in that polite way people do when they smell entertainment. Before I could answer, Madison lifted her glass and said, "He keeps himself busy, mostly by reminding me how things used to be done." A few people chuckled. Bradley grinned wider. "A traditionalist." Madison shook her head, laughing now. "No, more like a cautionary tale." The laughter came easier that time. I felt it move around the table, warm and careless. Then she delivered the line that made the room tilt. "Honestly, Daniel is kind of a joke, but he is my joke, so I keep him around." I did not move. I did not blink. I only looked at the reflection of the chandelier inside my water glass and watched it tremble like a small, trapped star. I learned a long time ago that the loudest person in a room is usually trying to keep everyone from hearing the truth. So I let them laugh. I let Bradley Cole lean back in his chair like he had just won something. I let Madison smile into her wine glass, pleased with the little wound she had opened in front of strangers. My face stayed still because stillness was the only language guilty people never respected. They needed anger. They needed me to defend myself, stumble over words, raise my voice, give them a scene they could use later. I gave them nothing. Across the table, Bradley's phone buzzed beside his plate. He glanced down, and the screen lit his face from underneath for half a second. Most people would have missed it. I did not. Madison's name appeared at the top, followed by a message short enough to read before he turned the phone over. "After tonight, he will be out of the picture." The words landed in my chest without making a sound. Not because I was surprised she wanted distance. I had felt that distance for years. It lived in the cold side of our bed, in the way she answered my questions with calendar dates instead of feelings, in the way she said we when she meant herself. What surprised me was how carelessly she had written it. Like I was not a husband. Like I was an item on a checklist. Bradley raised his glass again and started talking about Cole Meridian's new community housing initiative, a glossy project wrapped in charity language and soft photographs of smiling families. Everyone nodded. Madison leaned forward, glowing under the chandelier, describing press coverage, donor confidence, and the importance of public trust. Public trust. I almost smiled at that. For 6 months, I had watched that phrase appear on documents that did not behave right. Donations moving through consulting vendors that shared addresses with vacant storefronts. Administrative fees higher than construction costs. Invoices approved on Friday nights and reversed before Monday morning. A housing fund that somehow spent more money on marketing than housing. Numbers have a pulse if you know where to place your fingers. These numbers were racing. I had not gone looking for Madison at first. I had gone looking at Bradley. A former colleague from my forensic accounting days had asked me to review a pattern quietly, unofficially, as a favor. One spreadsheet became 10. 10 became a folder. Then Madison's signature appeared on a communications approval tied to a payment schedule she had no reason to touch. After that, I stopped sleeping well. The woman beside me at that table thought I was drifting through life, harmless and outdated. She did not know I had copies of donor ledgers stored in 3 places. She did not know I had met Rachel Monroe twice in a diner outside Naperville, sliding papers across a booth while truckers drank coffee around us. She did not know the man she called a joke had spent 12 years finding the thin seam where arrogance splits open. So when Madison laughed again and placed her hand over Bradley's, I folded my napkin, set it beside my plate, and waited. Not for revenge. For the moment the truth would stop whispering and start speaking in a voice no one could ignore. The ride home from the Harrington Hotel was so quiet I could hear the turn signal clicking like a clock, counting down to something neither of us wanted to name. Madison sat angled toward the passenger window, scrolling through her phone, the city lights sliding across her face in blue and gold strips. Every few minutes, she smiled at something on the screen. Not a warm smile. Not the kind I used to get across a diner table when we were 26 and broke enough to split one order of fries. This was a polished smile, trained and sharpened, built for rooms where people measured worth by who noticed you. I watched the road and thought about the first apartment we had in Oak Park, 800 square feet, bad heat, thin walls, and a kitchen drawer that stuck every time it rained. Madison used to sit on the counter while I cooked boxed pasta after work, barefoot in sweatpants, reading my case notes like they were mystery novels. Back then, she loved the way my mind worked. She said I could hear lies hiding inside numbers. She said it made her feel safe, being married to a man who could see through polished surfaces. I believed her. Maybe that was my first mistake. Success did not change Madison all at once. It arrived in small, respectable pieces. A better job, a better office, better shoes lined up by the closet like little trophies, invitations with embossed lettering, business dinners where she introduced herself with more confidence each time and introduced me with less. At first, I was proud. I ironed shirts before her events. I reviewed her speeches. I stayed up late helping her rewrite statements so donors would trust the company she represented. Then something shifted. She stopped asking what I thought and started asking whether my tie looked cheap. She stopped saying, "We are building something," and started saying, "This is important for my image." Image became the third person in our marriage. It sat between us at breakfast. It rode in the back seat. It stood in our bedroom while she told me which jacket made me look invisible enough for a room full of people she wanted to impress. That night, after she humiliated me, I wanted to ask when I had become a stain on her story. I wanted to ask if she remembered the woman who once framed my first business card because she said integrity deserved a wall. But married men learn the danger of asking questions when the answer has already packed its bags. So I kept both hands on the wheel and let memory do what memory does best. It hurt politely. When we pulled into our driveway just after midnight, Madison finally looked up. "You were quiet tonight," she said, as if quiet were a flaw she had tolerated for charity. I turned off the engine. The garage light washed the dashboard in pale yellow. "I was listening," I said. She gave a small laugh, opened her door, and answered, "That is the problem, Daniel. You always think listening makes you powerful." Then she walked inside, leaving perfume, cold air, and a sentence that told me she still did not understand the first rule of truth. It does not need to be loud to survive. By the time Madison went upstairs, I was no longer thinking like a husband trying to save a marriage. I was thinking like a forensic accountant who had just watched a suspect get careless under bright lights. That difference matters. A husband asks why. An investigator asks where the paper trail begins. I stood in the kitchen with my jacket still on, listening to the soft thud of her closet doors above me, and opened the secure folder on my laptop. 6 months of records stared back from the screen. Donor lists, vendor payments, consulting agreements, community housing budgets that looked noble in press releases and rotten in spreadsheets. Cole Meridian Properties had promised affordable homes for working families on the South Side, but the money moved like it was afraid of daylight. $200,000 to a marketing consultant with no website. $94,000 to a research group registered to a post office box in Indiana. Reimbursement requests approved before the events they supposedly covered had even happened. I had seen bad books before. These were not bad. These were dressed up. That was worse. The first time Madison's name appeared, I told myself there had to be context. She was public relations, not finance. Maybe she forwarded a document without reading it. Maybe Bradley used her signature block. Maybe my tired mind was looking for betrayal because my heart already felt it. Men will make excuses for the woman they love until the excuses start sounding like prayers. Then I found the compliance file. My name was on it. Daniel Whitaker, outside financial review consultant. The title looked professional, clean, almost flattering. Except I had never signed that contract. I had never agreed to review Cole Meridian. I had never received $1 from them. Someone had created a paper version of me and placed it exactly where blame would need to land if the charity fund ever collapsed. My hands did not shake. That scared me more than shaking would have. I clicked through the file line by line. My old office address. My former license number. A scanned signature copied from a document I had filed years earlier. Whoever built it knew enough to make a lazy person believe it and a careful person angry. Then I saw the routing note attached to the draft. Madison had forwarded it to Bradley at 11:43 at night, with one sentence beneath it. This should make him useful for once. The room went still around me. The refrigerator hummed. The furnace kicked on. Somewhere upstairs, water ran in the bathroom sink like life was normal. I read the sentence again, not because I needed to understand it, but because pain sometimes asks for a second look before it becomes fact. She was not just embarrassed by me. She was preparing to use me. The joke was not a joke. It was a setup. That night, I stopped hoping Madison would remember who I was. I saved the file, copied the metadata, backed it up twice, and sent one encrypted message to Rachel Monroe. It said, "We need to move faster." Rachel answered my message at 1:13 in the morning, which told me two things. First, she was awake. Second, she had been expecting it. Her reply came in 7 words. Same diner. 7:30. Bring the original chain. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark kitchen until the clock over the stove clicked its way toward dawn. Madison came downstairs at 6 wearing a cream blouse and the calm face of someone who believed the world still belonged to her. She kissed the air near my cheek, not touching skin, then asked if I had seen her blue presentation folder. I told her it was on the entry table. My voice sounded normal. That was the strange mercy of discipline. It lets a man carry a collapsing bridge inside his chest and still pour coffee without spilling. She left at 6:45, heels tapping across the porch, phone already pressed to her ear. I watched her back out of the driveway in the white Lexus I had helped negotiate, then waited 10 minutes before leaving in my old gray Ford. The diner outside Naperville sat between a tire shop and a storage facility, the kind of place where coffee tastes the same in every decade and nobody asks why 2 adults are studying bank records beside a stack of pancakes. Rachel Monroe was already in the back booth, black coat folded beside her, reading glasses low on her nose. Rachel had spent 20 years around financial crimes, first as a prosecutor, then as the kind of attorney powerful people hated because she knew where clean language hid dirty work. She did not hug me. She did not waste time. She looked at my face and said, "How bad?" I slid the flash drive across the table. They put my name on a consultant file. Her expression changed by half an inch. With Rachel, half an inch was a siren. She opened her laptop, reviewed the metadata, the routing note, the copied signature, the donor transfers, the vendor addresses, each piece clicking into place behind her eyes. Outside, pickup trucks hissed over wet pavement. Inside, a waitress refilled my cup without interrupting the silence. Rachel finally leaned back and said, "This is not just image management. This is preparation." I nodded once. The word preparation felt colder than betrayal. Betrayal is emotional. Preparation has folders. She explained what I already knew, but needed to hear from someone outside my broken house. Madison and Bradley were creating a version of events where I looked like the quiet financial advisor who mishandled review documents while they played shocked executives. If regulators came knocking, I would become the useful failure, the forgettable husband, the man nobody respected enough to believe. Rachel tapped the edge of the laptop. "We need proof they are still moving documents through you, not just old files." That was when I told her about the trap I had already built. One marked compliance packet, seeded with a harmless but traceable error, sent to Madison's personal printer queue 2 days earlier under the label revised donor audit language. If she ignored it, we had a dead end. If she forwarded it, we had intent. Rachel stared at me for a moment, then gave the smallest smile I had ever seen. "You always were patient." I looked down at my coffee. The surface was black and still. "No," I said. "I was married. By noon the next day, the trap had teeth. Rachel called while I was parked outside a dry cleaner on Madison Street, watching rain crawl down the windshield in crooked lines. She did not say hello. She said, "Your marked packet moved." My hand tightened around the phone. Where? Madison forwarded it from her personal account at 9:18 this morning. Bradley opened it at 9:42. Then someone uploaded a revised version into Cole Meridian's internal compliance archive at 10:11. I closed my eyes for 1 second. Not relief. Not satisfaction. Something heavier. Proof does not heal you. It only stops the bleeding from being denied. Rachel continued, voice low and precise. The traceable error is still there. They did not know what they were carrying. I looked through the windshield at a man in a Cubs cap jogging across the street with a suit bag over his head. Ordinary life kept moving, which felt almost insulting. What happens now? I asked. Now we let them step where they already planned to step. That evening, Madison came home glowing with the kind of energy she only had when a room had applauded her. She placed her purse on the kitchen island, kissed my cheek like an obligation, and told me there would be another event tomorrow, smaller than the gala, but more important. A press briefing for the Community Housing Initiative. Cameras, donors, city officials. Bradley wanted spouses present for optics. Optics. There it was again, the clean word people used when truth looked inconvenient. Do you need me there? I asked. Madison smiled without warmth. Need is a strong word. But yes, I want people to see we are stable. Stable. A house can look stable with termites eating through the beams. A marriage can look stable if one person is quiet enough. She opened the refrigerator, pulled out a bottle of sparkling water, and kept talking like she was reviewing a weather report. Just be pleasant. Bradley may mention some consulting support. Do not over-explain. You have a habit of making simple things complicated. I looked at her across the island, at the woman who once cried when I surprised her with a used dining table because it meant we could finally host Thanksgiving. Now she was standing under recessed lights, asking me to smile beside the story she had built to bury me. What kind of consulting support? I asked. Her eyes flicked up. Too fast. General language. Nothing serious. That flicker told me more than any confession could have. The next morning, the briefing was held inside Cole Meridian's downtown showroom, a bright room with floor-to-ceiling windows and framed renderings of homes that had not been built yet. Rows of white chairs faced a small stage. Cameras waited in the back. Bradley worked the room like a senator, clapping shoulders, lowering his voice for important men, raising it for donors who liked being seen. Madison wore a pale blue suit and the same public smile she had worn the night she cut me open with a joke. Rachel texted me at 8:56. Federal agents are on site. Do not improvise. I slid the phone into my pocket and stood near the side wall, invisible by design. Then Madison stepped to the microphone and began speaking about responsibility, transparency, and trust. 3 words. 3 masks. Bradley joined her, thanked the donors, then turned slightly toward me. And of course, he said, smiling for the cameras, we appreciate Daniel Whitaker's quiet guidance on the financial review process. Madison looked at me then, not lovingly, not nervously, expectantly. She was waiting for me to become the fool she had described. I stepped forward, slow enough for the room to feel it, and placed one small flash drive on the edge of the podium. Then, I said, my voice calm, let us discuss the review process accurately. The room did not explode. That is the thing people misunderstand about moments. Like that, real consequences rarely arrive with thunder. They arrive in a pause. A narrow, airless pause where every person understands something has shifted, but no one knows who is allowed to breathe first. Bradley looked at the flash drive, then at me, and for the first time since I had met him, his smile missed its cue. Madison recovered faster. She always did. Daniel, she said softly, with that careful public voice spouses use when they want strangers to think they are managing something fragile, this is not the time. I kept my hand beside the podium, not touching the flash drive anymore. You are right, I said. The time was 6 months ago, when the donor money first left the housing account. A camera clicked, then another. The sound traveled through the showroom like small cracks spreading across glass. Bradley stepped closer to the microphone. I think there has been a misunderstanding. Rachel appeared near the back wall before he finished the sentence. She was not alone. Two federal agents moved in quietly from the side entrance, badges visible but voices calm. Nobody ran. Nobody shouted. There was only the sudden rearranging of faces. Donors leaned away from one another. City officials looked down at their phones like screens could offer shelter. Madison stared at Rachel, then at me, and the color drained from her expression in slow, careful inches. "What did you do?" she whispered. It was the wrong question. Guilty people always ask what you did, not what they did. One of the agents asked Bradley to step away from the podium. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked smaller without the room believing in him. Another agent approached Madison and spoke to her in a low voice. I could not hear every word, but I heard enough. Records. Warrant. Questions downtown. Her hand tightened around the edge of the podium until her knuckles turned pale. The same hand that had rested on Bradley's arm while she laughed at me. The same hand that had forwarded a marked packet and thought the world would blame a quiet husband with an outdated suit. Flashbulbs started pulsing now, not glamorous like the gala, not warm like celebration. Cold. White. Exact. Madison looked toward the cameras, and I saw the public relations director inside her trying to survive. She straightened her jacket, lifted her chin, tried to build a version of herself the room might still accept. But truth has a weight image cannot hold forever. Bradley was escorted through the side aisle first, his polished shoes silent against the showroom floor. Madison followed a minute later, not in handcuffs for spectacle, not dragged or shamed for entertainment, just guided by process, by paperwork, by the law she thought could be arranged around her. That was worse for her. Drama would have given her something to fight. Procedure gave her nothing to perform. As she passed me, she stopped close enough that I could smell the faint floral perfume she wore to expensive rooms. "Daniel," she said, her voice barely holding together. "You cannot let them think I knew." I looked at her then, really looked. At my wife. At the woman from the Oak Park apartment. At the stranger who had tried to turn my name into a shield for her choices. "I did not make them think anything," I said. "I gave them what you wrote." Her lips parted, but no sentence came. For once, Madison Whitaker had no statement ready. The agents led her out beneath the bright showroom lights, past the renderings of homes promised to families who might never have seen them. Behind me, Rachel picked up the flash drive from the podium and slipped it into an evidence bag. The plastic sealed with a soft click. Small sound. Big ending. By the time I got home, the house looked exactly the same, which felt almost cruel. The porch light was on. The dishwasher hummed. Madison's blue presentation folder still sat on the entry table where she had left it, clean and useless. I stood there in the hallway for a while, looking at the framed photograph from our 10th anniversary, both of us smiling beside Lake Michigan with the wind pushing her hair across her face. A stranger would have seen happiness. I saw evidence of a man who had believed effort could keep two people facing the same direction. That night, I slept in the guest room, not because anyone told me to, but because some doors closed before the paperwork. Catches up. At 6:17 the next morning, her face appeared on the news while my coffee went cold in my hand. The reporters spoke carefully, using words like alleged, investigation, and cooperation, but the image did most of the talking. Madison Whitaker, the woman who built her life around lighting, angles, and perception, stared out from a county booking photo beneath a headline she could not edit. Bradley Cole's name followed hers. So did the charity fund. So did the missing money. So did the families who had been promised homes while executives passed invoices around like stage props. I did not smile. People think justice feels like celebration when it finally arrives. It does not. Not when you love the person being led through it. Justice felt like standing in a room after the music stopped, hearing only the chairs being folded. My phone rang at 8:03. Unknown number. I knew before answering. Her voice sounded smaller through the county line, stripped of the polish she used in ballrooms and interviews. "Daniel," she said, and then nothing for 3 seconds. Silence had always been mine. Now it belonged to both of us. "They are making me look like a monster," she whispered. I looked at the television, muted now, where the same photo appeared beside footage of Cole Meridian's showroom. Tell them I did not understand everything. Tell them Bradley handled the money. Tell them I was scared. There it was. Not an apology. A revision. One last statement drafted for survival. I closed my eyes and saw the Harrington Gala again. The chandelier. The table. Her hand on Bradley's sleeve. The laughter moving around me like I was furniture nobody wanted, but everyone felt entitled to mock. I heard her voice saying I was useful for once. I heard Rachel saying preparation. I heard my father telling me a man's name is the one thing he should never let someone else spend. Madison, I said quietly, I am done editing your image. Her breath caught. Maybe she cried. Maybe she only realized tears had no audience left. You would let them ruin me? She asked. I looked toward the hallway, toward the old anniversary photo, toward the life I had kept trying to repair. With both hands while she loosened every screw. No, I said. I let the truth arrive with receipts. The line went quiet, then disconnected. Later that afternoon, I walked to the corner store under a gray Chicago sky and bought a newspaper for the first time in years. Her photo was below the fold, smaller than it had been on television, but still there. The headline looked heavy in black ink. I read it once, folded the paper carefully, and stood beside the trash can outside the store while traffic rolled past on wet pavement. For a moment, I thought about keeping it. Proof that I had not imagined the cruelty. Proof that silence had not meant weakness. Proof that the man she tried to turn into a punchline had survived the sentence. Then I dropped it into the trash and walked away. Not because the past was gone. The past never leaves that cleanly. But because I no longer needed to carry her version of me. The wind came off the lake cold enough to sting, and for the first time in years, I did not shrink from it. I buttoned my coat, put my hands in my pockets, and kept walking.